During the next half hour or so, we'll be having a look at the Irish sea fishing industry. Now, just a general look, because this is a pretty big industry. It's bigger, perhaps, than some of us imagine. It's big, and it's complex. There's more to it than just trawlers battling the waves. That's just one part of the story. Like any other industry, the sea fishing industry is concerned with transport and factories, with wholesaling and retailing, with training young people, and developing markets at home and abroad. But first, let's try and get some idea of scale.
On an average day, over 200 fishing vessels will be operating in the seas around Ireland. 200 Irish boats with a skipper and maybe 4 or 5 crewmen. Between them, they catch over 30,000 tons of fish every year. 30,000 tons landed in ports all over Ireland. The biggest landings are usually at Castletownbere, Killybegs, Howth, Dunmore East, Dingle and Galway. But places like Schull and Kilmore Quay between them will land nearly 1,000 tons every year. And that's a lot of fish.
As I say, it's like any other big industry, except for one thing. Fresh fish, I needn't tell you, is a very perishable commodity. So you can't afford to shelve your problems until Monday and take off for the weekend. You've got to do something about them right now. And you've got to have a very smooth liaison between your section and the next. Altogether, you see, the fishing industry employs over 3,000 people ashore. So for a start, these 3,000 are depending on the fishermen to keep the supply coming in, day out, which means that the fishermen must have the finest available equipment. Trawlers are usually classed by length. Now, this is the model of a 65-footer. It has berths for 8 crewmen, a little galley here where they can cook quite good meals, a diesel engine, a hold which carries about 30 tons of fish, and up here is the wheelhouse where the skipper controls everything. There's a two-way radio, of course, and a couple of other electronic refinements. Trawlers like this are built entirely in Irish boatyards, like the one at Killybegs, which is operated by Iascaigh Mhara.
The raw material of a boat. Native Irish timber, oak and larch. Every log with a number and a future. And the man that shapes its future, the foreman shipwright here. There's something very satisfying about boat building. Probably because the material itself is so simple. And what, after all, could be more basic than wood? Because of this, the skill is everything. The skeleton of a boat. A new 30-footer specially designed for lobster fishing, salmon netting, and so on. Shallow and broad-beamed for working near the shore. Here, the cold statistics of the plans get the warm touch of humanity as the timber is coaxed into shape and a boat grows. Small boats and big boats. They all need the same craftsmanship. They're all designed and built totally in Irish boatyards, down to the last nut and bolt, the last fathom of rope. And the experts say they're as good as any fishing vessel anywhere. This is one of the 65-foot trawlers, and a big one like this will cost about £26,000. That's quite a responsibility for everyone in the boatyard. Not to mention the customer here, who has to find the 26,000. Not all at once, of course, because he's been approved for a grant of about 6,000, and he'll get the rest on a 15-year loan. Anyway, it's all there in black and white, so that end of it's all right. And the boat seems to be coming along nicely. Still, no harm in checking. 250 horsepower engine, bunks for 8 crew, everything. These boat builders won't forget a thing, so there's nothing to worry about, is there? Yes, yes, it'll be exactly like that.
Well, now that we've got the boats, let's look at the sort of fish we can catch with them.
The types of fish can be split into 2 major classes. Demersal fish, which live near the bottom, and pelagic fish in the upper layers of the sea. The demersal fish down at the bottom are whiting, haddock, cod, plaice, and so on. Then the pelagic fish are those fish that swim in large shoals like herring, mackerel, and sprat. As you can well imagine, the division isn't always as clear-cut as that. At certain times, when they're spawning, the pelagic fish come down very near the bottom.
And the third category is shellfish. Prawns, lobsters, crawfish, periwinkles, scallops, mussels, and so on. Now, it's obvious that all these different types of fish, with their different habits and their different movements, they all call for different techniques of fishing. Now, I suppose most of us, when we think of sea fishing, we think of trawling. After all, they call the boats trawlers. But in fact, trawling is only one method among a wide variety of techniques which the fisherman has to master.
Trawling itself is done with a cone-shaped net. This net is dragged along the sea bottom. As the net moves along, the mouth of it is kept open by the pressure of water on 2 vertical boards, usually called trawl doors. It's also kept open by floats on the top. The narrow point of the net is called the cod end, and it's here that the fish are trapped when the net is hauled up. Long line fishing involves the laying of lines of over a mile long. At intervals along the lines are hooks, thousands of them, and each of them has been baited. That's long line fishing. Then there's drift net fishing, and this involves setting a fence of netting in a long straight line of maybe 2,000 yards. The fence is about 15 yards high. In the meshes of this net, herring and mackerel are gilled. This same technique is also used extensively in the catching of salmon. The fence idea is also used in ring netting, when 2 boats combine their operation to surround, say, a shoal of herring by a circular net fence. At first, this has a very wide diameter. Then the diameter of this circle is reduced by hauling in the slack netting, closing the bottom in the process, and forming a small bag from which the fish are taken into the boat by net scoops. Seining involves surrounding a large area on the sea floor with ropes and fairly shallow netting. When the boat starts to haul in the ropes, they straighten out, driving the fish inwards. The fish are then collected in the conical net bag. Of all types of fishing, I suppose most of us who visit the seaside towns are more familiar with pot fishing, used for lobster, crawfish, or crabs. The pots vary enormously, but the principle is the same in each. In effect, it's a trap with a piece of bait inside. The pots are usually made of sally rods or timber laths, in such a way that the shellfish can get in very easily after the bait, but it's nearly impossible for them to get out again. You're wasting your time, I tell you. For harvesting shellfish such as mussels, oysters, and scallops, which live on flat, clear bottoms and don't move around much, dredging is the method used. A dredge which is towed by a small boat consists of a heavy metal blade which sometimes has teeth like a comb. Attached to this is a net bag. The dredge is dragged along the seabed and the blade dislodges the shellfish, which are then scooped into the net.
Well, you can see that no matter what else, you've got to be versatile if you want to be a fisherman. But if you're fit as a fiddle and don't mind hard work, well, that's no drawback either.
There are about 2,000 fishermen in Ireland. Hardy men for a hardy job. And an exciting job, because sea fishing is the only remaining career that depends on hunting, with all the excitement of the chase. You feel this excitement when you're a 17-year-old apprentice who's only been fishing 6 months. But you also feel it when you're 10 years older and skipper of your own boat, like Seamus. Every day starts with the really crucial decision, where to hunt. And it can be anywhere within a radius of maybe 60 or 70 miles for one day. Deciding where to fish is the skipper's own decision, based partly on today's forecast, partly on his own knowledge of currents and the likely movements of the fish. Soon now, the boats will separate as each skipper backs his own judgment. But in the meanwhile, there's breakfast down below. And if you're a 17-year-old apprentice, you're pretty enthusiastic about breakfast too. Well, if you're doing a man's work, you need a man's breakfast. Isn't that right, Peter? Yes, that's Frank there on the right, the man we saw buying a boat. In a few months' time, he'll be up in his own wheelhouse, like Seamus here, waiting till someone can relieve him at the wheel, waiting till last for his breakfast. Still, Seamus has plenty to keep himself occupied.
Nowadays, the fisherman has science on his side. There's the Decca navigator, but we'll have more about that in a minute. There's the two-way radio, of course, and the echo sounder. Every trawler has an echo sounder, something like this one. Roughly speaking, it works very like the Iascaigh used during the war for detecting enemy submarines, except that our echo sounder detects fish.
Briefly, there's a transmitter here in the boat which sends down pulses into the sea. The pulses bounce back and a receiver in the boat picks them up again. If the pulses hit a shoal of fish, the operator can tell from the intensity of the echo and from the time elapsed the size of the shoal and how deep it is.
The echo sounder records continuously on a roll of paper. Very often, an experienced skipper can tell from the type of markings the type of fish down below. As well as detecting fish, this instrument tells the skipper all the time the depth of water underneath him, whether the bottom is smooth or bumpy, sandy or rocky. Now this is vital because, you see, he can't afford to cast his nets where he might tear them, so he's got to plot a course where he can avoid these hidden hazards. Now this brings us to navigation. We saw Seamus keep an eye on his Decca navigator. This instrument gives him his precise position every moment of the trip. Now these three dials are marked red, green, and purple. Usually he works on two of them. Let's just say on the red and on the green. Then he refers to this chart. He gets the red reading. Let's take this red line here. And then the green one. We'll take this green line here. Now, where those two lines cross is his exact position at this moment. The skipper keeps a record of all his trips so that if the fishing is very good here today, he can come back tomorrow to this exact spot.
Today we're trawling for whitefish along the bottom. That's one of the trawl doors we mentioned. Keep the boat broadside onto the wind so she'll blow clear of the net. In go the trawl doors and down. While most of the boats are out, there's a lot of work going on in the home port. Take Killybegs, County Donegal. On an average day, there are about 24 trawlers working out of Killybegs. But usually, there are 2 or 3 boats left in the harbour, perhaps changing over their fishing gear from one type of fishing to another, perhaps repairing yesterday's damage, because even with modern navigation equipment, a fisherman can still occasionally tear his nets. the ice tower which supplies the whole port, ice for the boats at sea, more ice for the fish before it's sent inland. Tons of ice every day. Ice for the factories too. This factory produces high-quality consumer products like kippers and quick frozen fillets. Whiting, straight from the quayside, only 300 yards away. There's machine filleting too, but some fish are better filleted by hand. About 1,000 people altogether are employed in these Irish factories, processing fish in one way or another. So it's quite a big industry and a valuable extra outlet for the expanding catches of Irish fishermen. Quick freezing is one way, and there's a big demand for smoked fish too. By the time a housewife buys a fillet, nearly half the weight of the fish has been cut off. So next time you hear on your radio the price of fish at the auctions or at the quayside, remember that price is for the whole fish, head, tails, bones and all. But even then, we don't waste what is cut off, because there's another type of factory which processes the leftovers. Here, the heads and tails from the fillets, as well as any surplus fish from the trawlers, here they're processed into fish meal, which is used as animal feed.
The two-way radio isn't for use simply in emergencies. It keeps the boats in touch with a fishing pattern over a whole area. You've probably heard them on your radio at home if your set covers the trawler band, which is down here about 135 meters.
Hello, Ardcarna. Carrie Gunner here. We're just hauling the net, Thomas. I'll give you a call back after a while when we have it hauled. Over and out.
I got you 5 knots then, Seamus. Right on, Seamus, we'll be hearing you later on. Over and away.
The crew get a share of the boat's earnings instead of wages. They like it this way. So everybody has an interest in the size of the catch. And the next few minutes will set a value on the whole day's work. And there's still more, still in the net. Not bad. Not bad at all. During the voyage home, the fish are cleaned, graded for size and quality, and iced. Any low-quality stuff is put aside for the fish meal factory. Empties back from this morning's market. The lorries may come 150 miles or more to collect today's catch. Well, the weather has relaxed a bit now that we're nearer home. You might as well do the same, Seamus. And let Frank get to know what it feels like up there. The herring season is just starting, and some boats are already in with big catches. Herrings are not graded and boxed on board the boat the way whiting and haddock are, for instance. For one reason, there's just too many of them. A boat may catch up to 30 tons of herring in one shot. That's 3 lorry loads just from one boat. Maybe some other boat will only have 1 load. But the right number of lorries have got to be here at the right time. Plenty of ice must be ready, and fish boxes too. The situation has got to be assessed and reassessed as boat after boat comes in. When the high-quality fish has been unloaded, the remainder goes straight to the fish meal factory. The last lorries take away all the hustle and bustle with them. Now the boats are cleaned down and the gear prepared for the morning. Most of the crews will sleep on the boats, even those who live in the port. There isn't much point in going home when you're setting out again at 4 or 5 in the morning. While they sleep and you sleep, the fish is on its way, some directly inland and more to the big auction centres. Seven o'clock any morning, Monday to Saturday. Here in the first couple of hours, auction after auction takes place. Each wholesaler has his own area in the market known as a bank. Every auctioneer represents 10, 20, or maybe 50 votes. Fish caught only yesterday in the shops at 9 this morning. In Rome or Paris or Berlin, the housewife buys fish that may be 2 weeks from the sea. But we in Ireland do in fact get the freshest fish in the world. We're beginning to realize this more and more. The retailers themselves will tell you that their shops are busier nowadays every day of the week.
And this is just to show what can be done. There's a growing interest in fish cookery nowadays all over the country. In the home, of course, but in the schools too. And every year, Irish schoolgirls can win awards for all sorts of marvellous fish dishes like these. Fish is also pretty important as an export, and already the industry is sending fish products all over the world. Irish prawns, lobsters, periwinkles, scallops, herring, whiting and mackerel, for example, command a ready market in Britain, France and Germany and Belgium, Holland, Italy, South Africa and so on. Even down to Australia, sales of Irish whiting are increasing all the time. Exports overall are already over £2 million, and every year they're going higher. A very good picture, and it can get better.
Like anything else, the more we learn about the sea, the more we get out of it. The work of the Fisheries Research Vessel Cufasa is just one example of a continuing study by Irish scientists, collecting data about the breeding habits, the movements, and the growth rate of all our fish. And the drive for greater knowledge goes on in other ways too. Exploratory fishing trips are organized where regular trawlers set out to find new fishing grounds and maybe concentrate on different varieties of fish. But every fishing trip by every trawler adds to our knowledge, our experience, helps us to win a greater harvest from the sea. And the harvest is there every day of the year, all around us.